All right. So, whenever we left off there, so we're talking about being shaped by the gospel, and so here we're not so much looking at the divisions, but Paul has switched and is treating or dealing with sexual immorality that existed within the church, and he's saying basically, do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? So because of the cross, a believer is united to Christ. They're viewed as being united together. But then he says, or do you not know that he who is joined to a prostitute becomes one body with her? So and he's going back to the commandment for marriage, for the two shall become one flesh. But he who is joined to the Lord becomes one spirit with him. Flee sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, so there's something different about sexual immorality. But the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. I'll confess there's a certain degree, I'm not exactly sure what that means to sin against one's own body, but there's something distinct about that. Or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own. You were bought with a price, so glorify God with your body. And so this being shaped by the gospel, Paul comes to the conclusion of all of this as he is, this section at least, as he is trying to teach them about their sexual ethic. And in doing so, he's telling them, you are not your own. You were bought with a price. What's the price that they were bought by? The blood of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
You're no longer your own. So because of the reality of the gospel, the reality that Christ came into the world to die for sinners, because of that, you no longer belong to yourself. You no longer have dominion over yourself. You are to be ruled by God, and He is to be in control. So you're not your own. You were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. So your body is not meant for your own pleasure, but to glorify God. Do you see how this teaching on the gospel is shaping everything about the individual, shaping their unity together, and all of these things, shaping their sexual ethic. Later, Paul will encourage singleness, and he says, singleness of the in devotion, or singleness, not being married. And then he'll say about that, I say this for your own benefit, not to lay a restraint upon you. I'm not trying to restrain you, but to promote good order and to secure undivided devotion to the Lord. So Paul, because of the value of God, Paul encourages some to not be married in order for their devotion to the Lord. Marriage is good, it was good in the Old Testament, continues to be good in the New. But singleness is an option. And then all of this is summed up in love, as we see here. Paul addresses them. It's a little bit hard to see. This is kind of one of these classic passages, but it comes to that's read a lot in weddings and things of this nature. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. And so that, Paul is, in light of this, and as he's speaking to the church and addressing the church, he's urging them to love one another. And in the midst of the conflict and confusion that exists within the church, he's urging them to love one another. It's just a central issue for them. So in the book of 1 Corinthians, there is he treats the gospel. And we've talked a lot about the gospel, but let's pause and seek to define the gospel and ask what it is. To do that, before we do that, I want to show a short video segment on kind of this "What is the gospel?" is the title of it, and then we'll move on to talk about it and look at it a little more.